Hello everybody and welcome to Dryer Days Art Studio. I'm Catherine and I'm so happy to have you here today. This is the piece I will be working on in this video. It is a 9" by 20" piece of MDF board that is a 1/2 inch thick. I did this completely with Stone Coat Countertops resin. I did use some acrylic paints, as well as you can see some glitter there. I use Uni-Posca pens, glass, stones, and this was a really fun piece to make. Here I just wanted to show the prep work. The lines that you see there are made out of an epoxy sculpt, and all the products that I use you can find down in the description of every video of mine. I do have an Amazon storefront, but I do try to list all of the products as well in the description. And what I do is I mix that epoxy together. I lay down in pencil first where I think I want the boundaries to be, and then I do the epoxy. That takes about a day to dry. I let it dry for about a day till it's rock hard, and then I come in with my paint and lay down the color that I think of kind of where I want my resin colors to go, so that I have that already established before I even come in with my resin. And I got some large glass chunks from Michael's that you can see I glued down there, and these are also some crushed glass and some stone that I found, and I am using this time Elmer's clear glue. I wanted to try that out. I do use my glue gun in this too, which I love my glue gun, but I wanted to try Elmer's clear glue, and it works great, but it does take a long time to dry. Prep work is really important. I know a lot of people that's their least favorite part, but when you do that prep work, you can really get a beautiful piece, and it saves you time and energy and money. And going along with prep work, as you can see here, I have my board. I'm preparing my resin to the side, but you can see I have the entire rectangle now taped off around the edges, and that's to help contain my resin while I pour. And I just add a little bit of my mixed resin into their paper cups, and you can see I've already got my colors in the cups. Sometimes I'll put the paint in, or the colors, pigments first and then add resin. Sometimes I have the resin first and I'll add the paint. It just sort of depends. And today I started with the colors first. Just wanted to show thoroughly mixing that metallic paint in with my resin here. This is not sped up for time. This is actually how quickly, and I go in and really scrape the sides, scrape the bottom. And you want to do that with anything you're mixing, your resin, your paint to resin, pouring medium with your paints, all that good stuff. And I will go quiet for a little bit here. I just wanted to show how I layer my resin in. This is obviously my first layer of resin, but I just want to show how I lay the colors in next to each other, and how I use different techniques to sort of marry them together, using my stick, using a sponge. And I will just go quiet so you guys can watch that. I do just want to comment on a couple things that I'm doing here. That first strip that I laid down on this section was clear resin, and that's because sometimes I like to see that paint or color from the underneath coming through. And I do want to add too that I love using these paper cups, and I have links to this stuff on Amazon if you can't find them, but I honestly just get them, at the grocery store too. If I'm at the store and I happen to be down the aisle, I'll grab some paper cups. And what I love about them is you can take them and pinch them and make a really nice little reservoir there to pour your resin out. It gives you so much more control over it, and I just love the little paper cups. The sponge that I come in and use, and this is just a cut piece of a larger sponge. Again, you can find these at Michael's. And I sort of got it, as you saw before, maybe a little bit wet with clear resin first, so it's not bone dry. And I just lightly skim it across the top of these colors to sort of marry them together, give a little bit more of a marbled effect. Definitely want to have a good heat gun when you're using resin. I usually come in 2 to 3 times and heat up that resin, pop the bubbles. It'll help move that resin around as well and give you some nice marbling, lacing, and some beautiful cells. It will depend on what kind of resin you're using, but using the Stone Coat Countertops art resin, I do come in at about 3 hours after it's been sitting and I remove that tape. I heat up the edges lightly and blend that resin in around the sides. Now, after it's been 24 hours and it has hardened, I add another layer of tape, as you can see here, and that is because I'm coming in with a second layer of resin, and I again want that to act as a barrier so that all my resin isn't flowing over the sides. I usually always do a second layer of resin. I think it adds a lot of dimension to the piece. If there is a section or area that I really like and I don't want to mess with, I will just add a layer of clear resin over it to maintain that look. But with this piece, as you may notice on the far right end, I did come in and add glass pieces to that end section because I didn't really like how it looked. And I think this way it gives more balance to the piece, having the rocks, the glass chunks on either end, and then the stones and glass in the middle. It just looks more balanced to me. And some of the areas were just really dark, and I knew I wanted this to be very airy and light. I wanted it to be dreamy. I wanted it to be a little bit more white and creamy, but I did want some of those earthy elements in there as well. So here I'm just going in and lightening it a little bit, adding some glitter to some areas to add to some sparkle, and let's see how it progresses. Here's a tip of something I do. I always maintain a little bit of clear resin in my mixing cup for reasons like this. I will come in and I will just drizzle clear resin over the stones, over any rocks or loose glitter, and that will help keep those stones in place and also build up that level of resin, because I do usually come in with some of these pieces and do a third level of just a third layer, I should say, of just plain clear resin, especially if I'm using the Uni Posca pens, to make sure that that color from those marker pens will not be sloughed off, because it can be scraped off if something's too rough with it or something scratches on the piece. And so I do usually come in with these pieces, especially that I intend to sell, with a third layer of clear resin. But it's just a good idea to drizzle some over those spots to get those rocks nice and solidified in there. And also with these, I had used crushed glass and some of the pieces were a little sharp, so I did come in with my little handheld sandpaper and sanded them a little bit just so they weren't too, as my daughter would say, poiky and not hurting anyone or cutting anybody. Sanded them down, made them smooth, and then come in with this resin and drizzle it over the piece, and that'll really help give it a nice smooth finish. And coming in 3 hours later and peeling that tape off and just hitting the edges a little bit with the heat to soften them and blend those sides in nicely. I like to have a consistent color going around the edges of my pieces. I'm using my Uni Posca pens to add a few lines, I do come in and do this with gloves on. The reason I do that is because our hands have a lot of oil on them, and I know that I plan on doing a third layer of clear resin. And if too much from the oil on my hands gets on the piece, it is possible that I will get pockets or divots, little gaps in the resin that we hate to see. So I just put gloves on to make sure that I'm not getting any unnecessary oil on the surface here of the piece. Love these Uni Posca markers. You can find them in the description in my Amazon store. I did come in here too with a more permanent fine tip marker that I didn't show here on screen because I took it and I looked at it and I thought it needed a little bit more depth, so I didn't catch that on camera, but you will see it here when the piece is finished. And here it is, all dry after that third layer of clear resin has been applied. You can see the dark line right there. I added a couple of those just to give it some depth. I really like how this piece came out. It has that dreamy, kind of heavenly feel to it, which is exactly what I wanted. Love the way that glass came out, gave it such a wonderful texture. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Come check out the Facebook group, Acrylic Pouring and Fluid Painting. And until next time, keep on pouring.